This is English Time, your journey to English success. In this lesson, we are learning the past perfect tense. Firstly, why is it called the past perfect? Let's explore the origins of this grammatical tense. In Latin, the term perfect can be broken down to per, meaning through completely, as in permit or permanent, and facere, meaning do, as in manufacture or factory. Perfect signifies completely done. Let's look at the definition. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, the past perfect is defined as the grammatical form used for an action that had already finished when another action happened. It is made with had and a past participle. You can call it the past of past, indicating actions in the past that were already completed before other actions took place. Now let's examine the functions of the past perfect. Function 1. Expressing actions that occurred before another action. The past perfect tense is used to express actions that were completed before a specific point in the past. For instance, she had finished her work before the meeting started. Function 2. Describing unfinished actions in the past. It describes actions in the past that were not completed by a specific time or event. Like, I realized I had not packed my passport when I arrived at the airport. Function 3. Narrating past events in stories. In storytelling, the past perfect tense is used to indicate events that occurred before the main narrative, such as, once upon a time, a young prince had rescued a beautiful princess from a dragon. Function 4. Stating an event that happened at an unspecified time before another event. The past perfect tense can be used to indicate actions that happened at various times, but the specific times are not mentioned, like he had visited Paris several times before he moved to London. Function 5. Talking about actions that were expected to happen but didn't. It is used to express an expectation that an action would occur, but it did not. For example, I had expected him to call, but he never did. Function 6. Comparing two past actions. The past perfect tense is useful for showing the chronological or time order of two actions in the past, like she had already left when I arrived. Function 7. Expressing experience or change over time. It can convey the accumulation of experiences or changes over time. For instance, by the time he retired, he had traveled to over 50 countries. Function 8. Discussing regrets or unrealized possibilities. It is used to express regrets or possibilities that were not realized, such as, if I had known about the party, I would have come. Function 9. Emphasizing the importance of a prior action. The past perfect tense can emphasize the uniqueness or significance of an action that happened before a specific point, like I had never seen such a beautiful sunset before that day. Function 10. Referring to events that happened earlier in a paragraph or conversation. It can be used to refer to events that occurred earlier in a discussion or narration. For example, we discussed the project's progress and I had already submitted my report. The structure of the past perfect is quite straightforward. It is formed by combining the subject, had, which is the past tense of have, and the past participle of the main verb. The past participle comes in various forms. For example, D, as in save becomes saved, pave becomes paved. ED, as in play becomes played, stay becomes stayed. IED, like fry, fried, cry, cried. N, in know, known, throw, thrown. En, as in bite, bitten, eat, eaten. T, as in deal, dealt, feel, felt. Contractions. Contractions are also common in the past perfect. For instance, I'd, I had becomes I'd, we had becomes we'd, you had becomes you'd, he had becomes he'd, she had becomes she'd, it had becomes it'd, and they had becomes they'd. So how to figure out whether it is I had or I would, because both of them have the same contraction I'd. So understanding this is important. After I would, the verb appears in its base form. For example, I would eat an apple after lunch today. After I had, the verb appears in its past participle or V3 form, like I had eaten my salad before I had my lunch. Let's put this to practice with some examples. We have positive sentences, negative sentences, question sentences or interrogative sentences, and negative questions as well. So these cover a range of scenarios. Before we look at further examples, let's look at the positive sentences. So the positive structure is formed by subject plus had plus past participle. I had woken up when the alarm went off. Here, woken is the past participle of the verb wake. She had bought the birthday cake already. So buy is the verb and the past participle is bought. He had informed the manager before he left for home. So inform is the verb, the past participle is the ed form, which is informed. Let's look at some negative sentences which are formed by subject plus had plus not plus past participle. So I had not grown any vegetables until last month, or I hadn't grown any vegetables until last month. She had not prepared dinner when they arrived, or she hadn't prepared dinner when they arrived. You had not given her instructions before she used the machine, or you hadn't given her instructions before she used the machine. Let's look at some question sentences. In these sentences, you just swap the position of the subject with the helping verb had. So the had comes before the subject. Everything else remains the same. So had plus subject plus past participle of the main verb followed by a question mark. So had she told you to turn off the computers before leaving? Had she informed you before she left? Had they visited this place before? Right? Now negative questions are formed by had, subject plus not plus past participle of the main verb. This is without the contraction. If it is with the contraction, then you say had plus not, hadn't, plus the subject followed by the past participle of the main verb. So had I not told you to be careful with the electric switches, or hadn't I told you to be careful with the electric switches? Had she not informed you before she made the decision? Hadn't she informed you before she made the decision? Had they never been to Paris before, or hadn't they ever been to Paris before? Right, let's do some practice now. So positive sentences, you have some sentences with blanks to fill in. So I would encourage you to pause the video and work out the answers. And when you're ready, here we go. So the answers are: she had eaten lunch before the movie started. They had traveled to Europe last summer. I had completed the project before the deadline. He had read the book before watching the movie. The students had prepared for the exam all week. Let's look at some negative sentences practice. So pause the video again and figure out the answers, and when you're ready, here we go. So the answers are: she hadn't finished her homework before going to bed. They hadn't visited the museum last weekend. I hadn't seen that movie before. He hadn't cleaned his room yesterday. The chef hadn't cooked dinner before the guests arrived. The same thing goes for question sentences as the structure that I explained before. So you have the blanks here. Please fill them. Pause the video if you want to. And here are the answers. Had she studied for the test before the class? Had they traveled to Asia last year? Had you heard the news before it was announced? Had he met the manager before the interview? Had the team won the championship last season? Negative question sentences. Please pause the video, read through the questions and fill in the helping verb and not with the subject in its with the verb in its right form, past participle. So when you're ready, let's look at the answers. Hadn't she studied for the test before the class? Or hadn't she studied for the test before the class? Hadn't they traveled to Asia last year? Hadn't you heard the news before it was announced? Hadn't he met the manager before the interview? Hadn't the team won the championship last season? Right, now in past perfect, it is very common to see adverbs in use. Whenever you express it in a sentence, you use adverbs. So we have a list of them here. Let's look through them. So already, I had already sent the email. Just, she had just left when I arrived. Before, I had finished my work before the meeting started. Never, we had never been to this city before. Yet, they hadn't finished the assignment yet. Previously, Janet had previously worked in this company. Recently, had Simon recently finished his training? Always, he had always wanted to write a novel. Seldom, you had seldom worked hard for your exams. Some common mistakes that people make while using the past perfect. This is an advanced grammatical tense, so the usage in the right form is very important. So some people make mistakes with the past participle form of the verb, and some irregular verbs have all three forms the same. For example, cost is the same in present tense, past tense, and the past participle. Same goes for the verbs let, cut, hit, etc. Some irregular verbs end in en in their past participle form. For example, give becomes given, eat becomes eaten, weave becomes woven. Some verbs have the same past tense and past participle form. For example, study is studied for past tense and studied for past participle as well. In the same way, wait, waited, waited, complete, completed, completed. Some more mistakes to understand and correct. So some people get the meaning of the past perfect wrong, and they use it too often even when not needed. So you don't have to say I had finished the task yesterday. You can just simply say I finished the task yesterday. So just simple past is enough here. Look at this sentence. She rushed into the kitchen because she had forgotten to switch off the cooker. In this case, we need the past perfect tense because we are showing which action took place first. However, if we know which action happened first, or we have a list of activities that came one after another in the past, we don't need the past perfect tense. She rushed into the kitchen and turned off the cooker, for example. One more mistake is the past perfect tense is used to express conditional, but people use simple past instead. So it is wrong to say, if I studied hard, I would have become a doctor. Here you have to say, if I had studied hard, I would have become a doctor. Right? So that's all about the past perfect tense. If you have any questions or suggestions, if you have any ideas about the sentences, verb forms, anything, you can always post them in the comments box. That would be greatly encouraged. And thank you for watching. If you consider liking and subscribing to my channel, please do it straight away. Happy learning.